Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Tells from the Cinema podcast. This is a podcast I'm starting to just be able to talk about film, talk about movies, and entertainment in general like that. I'm a big movie buff, huge fan of the film industry, and just want kind of an outlet to be able to talk about it. But my main goal with this podcast is, like with the main channel, I love to spotlight filmmakers. That's kind of what I want to really delve into. And with this podcast, that's something I hope to do as well. I plan to kind of spotlight a filmmaker. I'm going to try to also get some ones that maybe you've never heard of before, or ones that are up and coming. For example, the filmmaker we're spotlighting in this episode today is Julias Onah, who is the director of Captain America Brave New World. That's coming out this weekend. Yeah, I've got kind of a run of show. I'll kind of give you a brief breakdown so you can kind of know what to expect, and then that way, if people want to jump forward, they can to certain segments, because maybe that will be where their interests lie, or I'd love to have people stick around for the full thing, but I like to give people options and choice. And my basic rough plan right now is I want to kind of break out each segment from this podcast and put it on the main channel as their own segments, and so that way people can kind of pick and choose what they want to watch and listen to. So if you kind of want all of it, though, this is the place to be. The run of show, we're obviously going to introduce you to what to expect with this podcast going forward, like we've been doing. Then we're going to do an actor spotlight. This is something that I want to kind of do as well, and try and keep it relevant to an actor that has a project coming out either this weekend or in the last couple weeks or in the next couple weeks, something like that. And I'm really excited about this one because we're going to do Ke Huy Quan. Hope I'm saying that exactly right. But he's one of my favorite actors. He has a very interesting and unique career. After that, on a typical episode, we might jump into some other segments. There's going to be segments that are rotating. Another segment I plan to have is what I've been watching. And this is going to be more of I'd like this to be somewhat of a movie club sort of thing. Hopefully in the future, I can get to the point where people might be able to write in or comment stuff that they're watching, and we kind of expose people to some projects maybe they've never seen before or never heard of, and what they kind of mean to us. That's a segment I plan to have on this channel at some point, is episodes where I sit down with somebody and we talk about their favorite movie, and it's all about what that movie means to them, how they were introduced to that movie, why it's so special to them. Just we get into the nitty gritty of everything they love about that particular film, because I found that there's so many different answers out there. That's a question I always like to ask people, especially on film sets when I meet people. Is I like to ask, what's your favorite movie, or what movie kind of inspired you to get into the film industry? I've found that the answers are very varied. They're all over the place. I get some people that say pretty big blockbustery type films, and then I get some answers that I'm like, wow, I've never even heard of that movie, or it's something a little more niche and under the radar. And so I think it will be a fun segment to do that in the future. Another segment is I want to do just a weekly recommendation or shout out for something in the film industry. I'll get into mine later. I won't share it now. But and then the last segment I'll do is a little show and tell. I'm a big collector, physical media, in film, also video games and entertainment in general. Big pop culture fan. But once again, that might be more of a rotating segment as well. Without further ado, let's get into the podcast itself. And we're going to start off with our filmmaker spotlight. Like I mentioned earlier, Julias Onah is who we are spotlighting today. Julias Onah is the director of Captain America Brave New World, which comes to theaters this weekend on Friday, Valentine's Day, actually. It stars Anthony Mackie as Captain America, and Harrison Ford is in it. And there's some interesting tidbits about that I'd like to get to in a second here. But let's go ahead and start off with just breaking down this guy's filmography a little bit. It's interesting, looking at his IMDb. He hasn't done a whole lot, and he's started off with some short films and stuff like that. And I'm remiss to say I haven't seen any of his films yet. And that's something I'd like to change, especially now that he's I guess you could say, in quotes, hit the big time. He's directing a Marvel film, which is in terms of budget and stuff like that, probably the biggest thing you can do in the industry at this time. But breaking down his filmography a little bit, he started off with a lot of short films, but he made his first feature directorial debut with a film called The Girl Is in Trouble. Now, I am not too familiar with this one. It's a little more indie, but it's a apparently like a crime action thriller sort of film. He then went on to direct The Cloverfield Paradox, and this is probably where a lot of people are maybe more familiar with him, as this was produced by J.J. Abrams and set in the Cloverfield universe. It was kind of like a tradition, it seemed like, for a bit, for a movie to get announced and we wouldn't know much about it, and then all of a sudden you find out like a month before release, oh, it's set in the Cloverfield universe, or you just have no idea in general. So Cloverfield Paradox came out in 2018. I have not seen that one, but I've only seen the first two. I've only seen the original and then 10 Cloverfield Lane. So this one I'd like to check out at some point. I'm pretty sure this one was a Netflix exclusive. It came directly to... Yeah, I'm looking now. It was direct to Netflix. He also directed in 2019 a film called Loose, which this is probably, from what I'm gathering, his most respected film. It sounds like it premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, and it has Octavia Spencer and Naomi Watts. Yeah, this one came out in 2019. It has a pretty good score. I know it's not like... I'm not a big score tracker or anything. I just think it's interesting to kind of follow scores from a general idea standpoint, just to get a general idea of how critics and or audiences maybe received something. Even though I never personally let that determine if I watch the film or not, or I try not to let it influence my opinion on it one way or another. But it is relevant to kind of see just generally what people thought of it. And Rotten Tomatoes wise, I mean, it's 91% critic consensus and then 77% for audience. So that's pretty good. This is one I'll want to check out at some point. I'm pretty interested in that one. Yeah, and then we go almost 6 years with Captain America: Brave New World. You have to assume the COVID-19 pandemic shutting down projects that were maybe gonna happen and whatnot. But yeah, so there was a little bit of a break there, but that's pretty common amongst most people's filmographies. If you look at them, there's kind of this gap because of COVID. Brave New World is his newest movie, and I was gonna shout out this article by Vanity Fair, which was actually just published this last week. It's by Anthony Brzeznicki. I don't know how to say it. Apologies. It's on Vanity Fair. You can check it out. It gave me a little more insight about Julias Onah and his background. So you can get the full story over at Vanity Fair. But he's he was born in Nigeria, and it's interesting because they asked him what movies kind of inspired him and whatnot. And when he first moved to America, there was 2 movies that he saw in theaters, and first one was The Lion King, and then the second one was actually Clear and Present Danger, starring Harrison Ford, which is really cool. And he's working with Harrison Ford in a new movie where he's playing the president, which is so cool. It's little things like that I think are awesome. In this article, Julius talks about how he never would have imagined that he would be where he is today and making movies with somebody as iconic as Harrison Ford. It's just such a cool story. Like, imagine growing up in Nigeria, moving to America, seeing a movie with Harrison Ford in it, and then 30 years later you're working with him. You're directing him in a movie. That's such a cool story. Yeah, he kind of went through the normal difficulties that a lot of struggling filmmakers do. He kind of started off bussing tables in New York, he mentions, and just going through all the hassles of getting his citizenship and stuff like that. And but he just never let go of this dream that he would, make movies. He made his dreams a reality, starting off with short films and then eventually making some features. And now here he is directing what you could say is arguably the biggest stage you can direct on, which is a Marvel film. And he actually studied at New York University, and he met Spike Lee there, who was a professor, and it sounds like he actually hired him as an intern, which is really cool. But there's a lot of interesting tidbits in this article, so I recommend checking it out. It's probably the article that you can see the most insights for Julias Onah as of right now, beyond his Wikipedia. But we kind of went over his directing career. He also wrote a film called Bad Genius in 2024, just this last year. Did not direct it. He's actually written every project he's directed except for Cloverfield Paradox. That was the one that he only directed on. He did not write. But it's a pretty great start to his career. He's only 42 years old, and so it'll be exciting to see more from him in the future, and see what kind of projects he goes for. I'll be interested to see if he kind of sticks with the Marvel stuff, if he'll be taking on kind of future Captain America sequels, or expanding in the Marvel universe, or if he'll kind of go back to more of a smaller budget, more indie type stuff. I imagine he'll maybe do a bit of a combination. Congrats to Julias Onah on his upcoming release this weekend. That's really exciting, and I hope we get to hear more about him in the future with more projects. All right, let's talk about Ke Huy Quan, Oscar winner now, beloved actor. I don't think there's anyone that could dislike Ke Huy Quan. He seems super genuine, super excited, and just genuinely happy to be a part of this industry and be an actor. And he's so excited. Like I love these pictures. He shares these pictures where when he's at events like the Oscars or Golden Globes or whatever it may be, and he takes selfies with all the celebrities. He's just like anyone else. The reason why we're kind of talking about him today is because he just had a new movie come out this last weekend called Love Hurts, which, from what I understand, is his first leading man role. But he's had such an interesting career. If you're not familiar with it, he essentially was a very popular child actor. Is kind of how he got his start. His first movie he ever did was working with Steven Spielberg in Indiana Jones Temple of Doom. He had The Goonies, where he plays Data. He was in Encino Man. He appeared in an episode of Tales from the Crypt. But he essentially kind of took a break from acting, and he, for a bit he was a stunt coordinator. In fact, I think he worked with Hugh Jackman on X-Men back in the day. He was a stunt coordinator on that, or a stuntman. He kind of just disappeared from the film industry. In fact, if you look at his IMDb, he had a project in 2002 called Second Time Around, and then there is a nearly 20-year gap, 19 years, without acting in anything. And this is, pretty uncommon for someone, especially like him, who was a pretty successful child actor. Had a role in 2021 in Finding Ohana, which I think was technically his first role back, but it wasn't quite as big as his return in Everything Everywhere All at Once, which came out in 2022. But this was such a special movie for many reasons, but not least of all for the return of this actor that so many people had, kind of wondered what had happened to him. And to see him return in such a powerful role, and not just any role either, but like his best performance, and an Oscar worthy performance, an Oscar winner worthy performance. And it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. I'm so happy that the Daniels brought him back for this project and gave him this moment to shine. And having him back in the film industry, to me, is huge, just because I think he brings this warmness to the industry. You know, he's an actor that I think most people will root for. They want to see him succeed. They want to see him in projects because he's just that kind of guy. You know, he's sweet, he's kind, he's humble. But I'm gonna kind of talk about some of my favorite performances from him. I'm gonna break it down into three things. I'm gonna give you my favorite performance, what I think is his best performance, and also what I think is his most underappreciated or underrated performance. So starting off with my personal favorite performance from Ke Huy Quan. It's a little difficult because it's between two, which is Temple of Doom and Goonies. But I ultimately have to go with Temple of Doom just because, considering that was his first role ever, and I think he is such a great companion character to Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones's companion characters are always very vital to the stories, and you know, you have some iconic ones. You know, you have Sala, Marcus Brody, and so for a little kid to, you know, work with Harrison Ford's rugged Indiana Jones so well in this movie is kind of like a breath of fresh air for the franchise. So I have to give that one as my favorite performance from him. But Goonies is, you know, so good as well. It's right behind there. As far as his best performance, I think this one's pretty obvious. I'm gonna go Everything Everywhere All at Once. You know, Oscar winning, as I've mentioned. You know, when he's breaking down in front of Michelle Yeoh towards the end of the movie. I don't want to spoil reasons why and stuff like that, just in case if you haven't seen it. But like, he is so good in that role. And then you of course have the iconic scene, which, you know, where he's talking to Michelle Yeoh, you know, and he delivers the iconic line of, you know, in another universe, I would have loved just doing laundry and taxes with you. And I think this role not only captures the spirit of him as an actor, but also is just a phenomenal performance from top to bottom. And so that's why I give that one his best performance. As far as underappreciated and most underrated role, this one's tough with him specifically for a multitude of reasons, but the main one being that he doesn't have the biggest filmography. Once again, because like we've said, he had that 20-year gap. In fact, if you look on his IMDb, he has 21 total credits as an actor. You know, and when over probably half of those are like random TV episode appearances, it's really hard to pick like an underappreciated and underrated role. So for this one, I'm just gonna go I'm gonna cheat a little bit just because I'm gonna go with Loki. And I'm mostly picking this one honestly because I really like Loki. I actually think Loki is one of my favorite Marvel projects there is. And I actually do think he gives a really good performance in season 2 and a memorable one at that. I think he helped elevate that season. And that's why I would kind of give it an underrated. You know, I don't hear people really talking about him in that show that much. But I think he did a great job. You know, in the future with other actors, there'll be a much more deeper filmography to kind of pick and choose from on that front. But I'd love to know what some of your guys' favorites are. And, you know, you can give me your 3 as well and break it down for me. All right, it's time for the Tales from the Cinema Movie Club. But, you know, I've been to the theater a couple of times this last week. I went and seen 2 films that are kind of a similar demographic, I'd say. And it's kind of for the horror, thriller kind of freaks out there like myself. But I saw Companion and Heart Eyes. You know, I really enjoyed both of these films. Companion is produced by Zach Kreger, who did the film Barbarian years ago. If you saw that one, which is awesome. It was directed by a guy named Drew Hancock, who, you know, I'm looking at his filmography in my Mac, and I'm actually not too familiar with his work. But it looks like he was, you know, a writer on Blue Mountain State, which is really interesting, but you can kind of get where the comedy stuff in this movie comes from. But it looks like he's done lots of music videos like Tenacious D and stuff like that, which is funny. Yeah, but I loved this film, Companion. I highly recommend checking it out. I think Sophie Thatcher as an actor is going to have a massive career going forward. I think she gives me a lot of Anya Taylor-Joy vibes. I think she'll kind of have a similar trajectory. After this and Heretic a few months ago, I think she's kind of cementing herself in that kind of horror thriller kind of genre. I think she'll have a pretty successful career in that realm, especially. And then Jack Quaid is also in this, and Jack Quaid is hilarious. I think this movie had some twists and turns that I wasn't expecting, and I think it's a very relevant film and is only going to become more relevant as time goes on. It gave me some kind of Black Mirror vibes and things like that. So if you like kind of like a Black Mirror vibe with, I'd say, a hint of more comedy, you would definitely like this movie. And then I saw Hard Eyes as well, and Hard Eyes is your more traditional slasher. I don't think it's anything mind-blowing or anything like that, but I think if you like a good slasher film, especially one that revolves around holidays, which I know is kind of specific, but it seems like we're getting more of those, like Thanksgiving, if you saw that a couple years ago, I would put it in the same kind of category as that. I think I like Thanksgiving more, but I still really enjoyed this one. And I actually really liked the chemistry between the two leads. Olivia Holt, and I can't remember what his name is, but he's in the new Scream films. Yeah, it's a fun date night for if you and your partner are both into horror and kind of more gory slashery type stuff. Maybe you're not into the more romantic comedy fare, then this is something for you. And I will say this movie actually still does have a lot of the romantic comedy trappings in it. Obviously, all set around a horror slasher sort of film, but you still get some of the romantic comedy stuff too. So if that's what you're kind of looking for, it's kind of a good hodgepodge. But going to TV now, I've been watching Severance, which is going on right now on Apple TV Plus, and what else is there to say? That anyone else isn't saying. This show is fantastic. The music is so mysterious, really draws you in. I love all the performances. I love the quirkiness of it. And I'm super interested just to see where it keeps going, because as a lot of people have pointed out, this show so far with every episode we're getting, it's like they're revealing something new every episode, which is pretty rare for TV, I'd say, especially nowadays. Actually, don't mind episodes that are just kind of vibes sometimes, but this show is definitely more heavy on progressing the plot, which is awesome. It really keeps you hooked the entire time. You're really drawn in every episode. It's definitely, out of every show that I'm watching currently or in the last couple of years, it's definitely the show that I'm most intrigued about where it goes next. So highly recommend Severance. If you're not watching that one, check it out. It's about halfway through, I think, right now. It's second season. And hopefully season 3 will come along way quicker than season 2 did, because I think it took like 3 or 4 years for season 2. Granted, there was COVID, and then the writing strikes and the actor strikes, and so that kind of all contributed. But so hopefully there'll be a quicker turnaround time now. But I also started for the first time The Sopranos, which this is a show I've been wanting to watch forever. I've been meaning to get to it for a long time. And I decided to just finally take the plunge. In fact, I'm going to kind of cover this show throughout the next however long it takes me to get through it. I plan to do kind of recaps for each season and kind of reflect on it in the year 2025, because this show has been off air for about 20 years now. I think it ended in 2006. It's already fun kind of just seeing like the vehicles and stuff like that from that time, because it's very, that's the time I was growing up as a kid, is when this show was set. And so just seeing some of the vehicles, I'm like, oh yeah, my grandma had that car, or stuff like that, or even just like the logos on like Coca-Cola and stuff like that. but I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm only about 5 or 6 episodes into the first season, but I can already tell that, Tony Soprano is going to be one of those all-time great characters. Yeah, so making my way through that, and then I started last year. I started watching American Dad. There's so many episodes, and it's hilarious. I think it's absolutely hilarious. I actually am a huge fan of Seth MacFarlane and his projects. The Ted TV show, which came out last year, was actually really good too. But yeah, I'm like on season 10 or 11 now of American Dad, just kind of blasting through it. Granted, I started it last January, so about a year now into watching it, and I'm, season 11. I think there's like almost 20 seasons, so I'm like halfway through. Uh, Something like that, something crazy. There's a high amount, but it's still going too. It's still rocking, and same with Family Guy. Um, Family Guy finished years and years ago, but I think there's been like 2 or 3 seasons since I stopped watching that I have to catch up on now, which I'm excited about because I love these shows. They're just fun background shows. And then also, me and my wife are rewatching Parks and Rec. I watched that show for the first time back when it aired. Basically, I wasn't watching it week to week or anything like that, but so I haven't seen it since it went off air, which I think was like 2016, something like that. Yeah, rewatching it with my wife, and that show holds up. It's so great. It's as hilarious as ever, and such a great cast. So many great episodes and jokes. Seeing some of these guys, like Chris Pratt in it, it's just so funny. He's actually hilarious in it, and it's just funny to see his career trajectory now, where he's more of a leading man, a little more serious. I know he has Guardians and stuff like that where he's goofy, but yeah, that's kind of it for me for what I've been watching. I'd love to hear what you guys are watching, and any new recommendations or movies or TV shows that you think you want to shout out or throw out there. Let us know in the comments, and introduce some people to new stuff. That's always a great gift to learn about some new films and new TV shows. I love experiencing some of these shows for the first time and finding something new that I love. Let's move on to our next segment. I have my weekly recommendation, which I just want to throw out there right now. I want to talk a little bit about commentaries, specifically DVD, Blu-ray commentaries. These are something that, I used to watch when I was younger a little more. Honestly, there was probably a 10-year period, I'd say, where I just kind of never watched these. I just kind of forgot that they existed, honestly. And this last few months, I've gotten back into watching them. I don't really know what it was that triggered it for me, but I think I came across like a clip on YouTube of just a clip from a commentary. It might have been Ben Affleck in Armageddon, which I think is one of the more classic DVD commentaries. But it was really funny, and I was like, I need to watch some of these commentaries again. I need to go back to them, or watch some ones that I've never seen before, more specifically. And so, I was always kind of shocked that I had never listened to the commentaries for my favorite movies of all time, which is The Lord of the Rings. Now, I will say, I think I did actually listen to them when I was really young, and I was barely paying attention. I probably just kind of had it on and was like also playing video games or something. I don't know, like on my Game Boy or something like that. I was like, I need to watch them now because I think I'd get some more insights. And it is amazing. The Lord of the Rings commentaries are fantastic. I highly recommend them. Lord of the Rings specifically has like 3 different commentaries for every movie. They have or more. It's kind of insane. And those ones, I'd say, from a filmmaking perspective, are the best ones to watch if you want insights on just like the production process. If you're fans of like the appendices of the Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, which are fantastic as well, you should definitely watch those. But if you're a fan of those and want even more insights and him going through literally scene to scene from every movie, I know that commentaries aren't for everyone, but if you're a film fan, especially of Lord of the Rings, highly recommend the director's commentary on those. But they also have a cast commentary, which I didn't know about, and those are awesome as well. They kind of splice multiple actors' commentaries together at the same time. So it's like you have all the hobbits are together for Fellowship. You know, you got Elijah Wood, Sean Astin, Dominic Monaghan, and Billy Boyd as the hobbits, and they're all in the same room together watching the movie. And I've got to say, like Dominic Monaghan and Billy Boyd as Merry and Pippin, them in these commentaries was one of my favorite things to listen to. And I was like, they have to have a podcast or something like that. And lo and behold, they do, which makes total sense because they are hilarious. They have such great chemistry. Uh, and, you know, they're not poking fun at things. They are in a way, but like they're not like in a crude or rude way. But you know, you can tell that they're just a little more lax and like about the commentaries, whereas some people are a little more like, you know, really paying attention to what's going on and letting the viewer kind of in on different things while they're just kind of joking. But then they also have like commentaries from the visual effects teams like Weta and stuff. Editors, it's insane. I haven't listened to all those ones, but I did go through both the cast commentaries and the director commentaries over the last few months. You know, almost kind of treated them like a podcast. Kind of just had them on when I was kind of doing some other stuff, and super interesting, super entertaining. So shout out to those. And then I went and actually listened to the Hobbit ones as well, which the Hobbit ones don't have as many. It's just the director commentaries. You know, you just have Peter Jackson and I think Philippa Bowens talking about the films. Peter Jackson, I think, is just very insightful, and he provides a lot of interesting information on the filmmaking process. And it's just kind of fun to see why they make some of the decisions they do, why things look a certain way, because maybe someone was rushing on this scene because there was someone had to leave, or some like crazy things that you just wouldn't even be aware of. Or, you know, like Martin Freeman was like notorious for, you know, giving Peter Jackson tons of different options. Like every take he would do something different, which is, you know, I think is awesome. But I know that can be like, I think editors specifically have a really hard time with that. You know, they like it when the actor kind of does the same thing because it makes their job easier. But I think directors like having the options more. Like Peter Jackson loved it. You know, he was like talking about how Martin Freeman would do one thing on one scene and the next, you know, take do completely opposite. It really gave him a lot to work with, which I think is super fun. And it's just interesting to hear those insights. But yeah, so, and then, you know, there's several others I've been watching through. I can talk about those another time. But, you know, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, like the Edgar Wright Cornetto trilogy commentaries are great as well. It's like him and Simon Pegg, and I think Nick Frost joins them. So highly recommend. You know, shout out to DVD commentaries. Bring them back. You know, I know that there's still some that exist, but they're fewer and further between. Tried looking at some of my newer Blu-rays or 4K movies that I have, and I'll look at the cases, and most of them don't include commentaries anymore. There's a few here and there that I'm like, oh, cool, this one has the commentary. But it's also another reason for physical media, I would say. You know, I know there's some instances where some places will put the commentary out if you buy like the digital copy or something like that. But from what I understand, that is also just much rarer. If you're watching a show like on Max or Netflix or something, like I don't think there's any option for the commentaries whatsoever. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'd love to know if there are options for that because I'd be interested in them. But from my brief research myself, looking through Netflix and stuff, I couldn't find any sort of way to trigger on the commentaries for any of these movies. And same for Max and stuff like that. Those are very important to, I think, especially just up and coming filmmakers, and even just film fans, you know, enthusiasts of film. I think they provide a lot of value, and so that's kind of my shout out for this week. DVD commentaries. Let's bring them back. Let's get back into a golden age of movie commentaries because they're fun. They're awesome. I love listening to them. If you have a DVD commentary out there that you love, let us know in the comments. I'd love to hear them and listen to them. And with that said, that kind of brings us to the end of the inaugural episode of the Tales from the Cinema podcast. I really appreciate you guys checking this out and supporting and watching or listening to the video podcasts, what other method you choose. Yeah, if you have any suggestions for me or suggestions for segments or thoughts and ideas, I'd love to hear them. You can, comment below on the YouTube video. Thanks for checking this out, and we'll see you guys next time.